Ambassador Zexthal had done this 47 times before. Each time was the same. His massive ship would arrive at a new world. The aliens below would panic. They would fire their primitive weapons. Then they would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. It always worked. Every single time. The blue and green planets spinning below his ship looked no different from all the others. The sensors showed a young species that had barely learned to split atoms. They had some fusion power, simple rockets, and basic computers. Nothing that could threaten the galactic hegemony. Zexthal stretched his forearms and checked the time. In his experience, most species surrendered within 3 days. The smart ones did it in 1 day. The really stupid ones took a week, but they all gave in eventually. His ship, the Eternal Dominion, was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to crack a moon. The humans below had nothing that could even scratch its paint. This would be easy. Begin standard first contact protocol. He ordered his crew. The massive dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace directly above the human homeworld. Zexthal expected to see their military scrambling in panic. Their communications should be going crazy with fear. Their leaders should be trying to contact him to beg for mercy. Instead, something strange happened. Nothing. The human military just sat there. Every ship, every base, every weapon platform simply waited. They did not attack. They did not run. They just watched. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Already?" That was fast. Zexthal activated the main screen. Usually it took hours for a species to work up the courage to contact his ship. A human face appeared on the screen. It was an older female with graying hair and calm eyes. She wore simple clothes and sat in what looked like an ordinary office. "Welcome to the Sol System," she said in perfectly clear galactic standard language. "We have been expecting you. Please state your intentions." Expecting them? How could these primitives have been expecting the hegemony? Zexthal had personally selected this system for conquest only 6 months ago. The information was classified at the highest levels. "I am Ambassador Zexthal of the Galactic Hegemony," he replied. "We have come to offer your species the opportunity to join our great empire." The human woman nodded politely. "Thank you. I am Secretary General Chun of the United Earth Council. We appreciate you traveling so far to make your offer. When would you like to present the terms?" This was not going according to plan. Where was the fear? Where was the desperate pleading? Where were the threats and posturing that every species did when faced with superior technology? "I can present them now," Zexthal said, trying to get back on script. "The hegemony offers your species protection and advancement. In exchange, you will provide tribute, military service, and accept our guidance in governing your world. You will receive access to galactic technology, trade, and knowledge." Secretary General Chun listened carefully. She asked a few questions about the details. She took notes. When he finished, she said, "Thank you for the comprehensive explanation. We will need some time to consider your proposal." "How much time?" Zexthal asked. 1 hour should be sufficient. 1 hour? Most species took days to make this decision. Usually they spent that time arguing among themselves, forming different factions, and sometimes even starting civil wars over whether to accept or resist. Exactly 1 hour later, Secretary General Chun appeared on his screen again. "Thank you for your patience," she said. "After careful consideration by the United Earth Council, we must respectfully decline your offer." Decline? In 300 years of service, Zexthal had never heard that word in response to the hegemony's generous offer. "I am sorry," he said, "but I do not think you understand. This is not a negotiation. This is an opportunity for peaceful integration. The alternative is conquest. We understand perfectly. Chun replied. We simply choose to decline. We appreciate the offer, but Earth will remain independent. Zexthal stared at the screen. This had never happened before. Not once. Every species either accepted immediately or fought a hopeless war before surrendering. None had ever just said no. Perhaps you do not fully comprehend what the hegemony is offering, he said slowly. We have technology that could eliminate disease on your world. We have ships that travel between stars in days. We have weapons that could destroy your entire planet with a single shot. Yes, we understand all of that, Chun said. Nevertheless, our answer remains the same. We decline. She paused for a moment, then smiled. It was a strange expression that Zexthal could not quite interpret. We would like to send you some gifts as tokens of friendship between our peoples, she continued. Some of our art, music, and literature. Perhaps they will help you understand our perspective. Before Zexthal could respond, the transmission ended. He sat in his command chair, staring at the blank screen. In all his years of service, through dozens of successful integrations, nothing like this had ever happened. Species fought. Species surrendered. Species negotiated. But they never just politely declined and offered gifts. His second-in-command approached cautiously. Sir, what are your orders? Zexthal considered his options. The protocol was clear. If a species refused the initial offer, the next step was a demonstration of force. Usually, vaporizing an empty moon or asteroid was enough to change their minds. Target the largest asteroid in their system, he ordered. Prepare a low-power demonstration shot. The main cannon charged with a sound that made the entire ship vibrate. The asteroid was 3 miles across and made of solid rock and metal. When the energy beam hit it, the asteroid simply ceased to exist. The explosion was visible from Earth with the naked eye. Zexthal opened. Communications again. I trust the demonstration was sufficient to show our capabilities, he said when Chun's face appeared on the screen. Very impressive, she replied. Thank you for the fireworks display. Our astronomers enjoyed watching it. However, our position remains unchanged. We respectfully decline your offer. Fireworks display? They thought the destruction of a 3-mile asteroid was entertainment? Secretary General Chun, Zexthal said slowly, I must inform you that the Galactic Hegemony does not accept refusal. You will join our empire, either peacefully or by force. Chun's expression did not change. Ambassador, we understand your position. However, we must insist on maintaining our independence. We hope this does not damage the potential for friendly relations between our species. The transmission ended again. Zexthal sat in silence for a long time. This was completely outside his experience. The humans seemed to understand exactly what they were facing, but they simply did not care. They acted as if the most powerful military force in the galaxy was nothing more than an annoyance. He opened a priority channel to Hegemony Command. This is Ambassador Zexthal, he said when the communication connected. I need to speak with the High Council immediately. We have a problem. The emergency session of the Hegemony High Council lasted 14 hours. They called in experts from every corner of the empire. Xenopsychologists studied the human transmissions. Military analysts reviewed the tactical situation. Historians searched for any similar cases in the empire's 3,000-year history. They found nothing. Counselor Vexstar, the empire's chief strategist, was the first to speak. Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand what we are offering them. No, replied Dr. Kethaluna, the empire's leading expert on alien psychology. They clearly understand. They ask detailed questions about our technology and our terms. They know exactly what they are refusing. Then maybe they think they can win a war against us, suggested War Marshal Gorthak, Some species have delusions about their military capabilities. Their military appears to be purely defensive, said Intelligence Chief Rathek. They have not made any threatening moves. They simply sit and wait. Counselor Venkstar pulled up the tactical displays. What if we increase the offer? Make it more attractive? Ambassador Zexthal, joining the meeting by subspace communication from his ship above Earth, shook his head. I have never seen anything like this. They are polite, friendly even, but completely unmoved by our demonstrations of power. Increase the incentives, ordered High Counselor Dexron, the supreme leader of the hegemony. Make them an offer they cannot refuse. Over the next 3 weeks, Zexthal made increasingly generous offers to humanity. First, he offered them advanced medical technology. The humans could live for 500 years instead of their current 80. They could eliminate cancer, heart disease, and every other ailment that plagued their species. Secretary General Chen listened politely, asked thoughtful questions, and declined. Next, he offered them faster-than-light travel. They could explore the galaxy, visit other worlds, establish colonies among the stars. The entire universe would be open to them. Chun thanked him for the generous offer and declined. He offered unlimited clean energy. Their world could become a paradise with no pollution, no resource shortages, no energy crises. Declined. He offered them advanced weapons to defend themselves against any threat in the galaxy. Declined. He offered them positions of authority in the hegemony government. Humans could help rule over other species. Chun actually looked amused at this offer before politely declining. Each rejection came with more gifts. Human art, music, books, and movies. The hegemony analysts studied everything carefully, trying to understand what made these people tick. The art was strange. Humans seemed to create things for no practical purpose except beauty or emotional expression. They painted pictures that did not depict real things. They told stories about people who never existed. They made music that had no function except to make people feel different emotions. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to value things precisely because they were imperfect. Their art celebrated struggle, loss, and failure as much as success. They wrote stories about heroes who died for principles rather than winning through superior firepower. I think I understand the problem, Dr. Kethaluna announced after studying the human cultural materials. They value independence more than advancement. They would rather struggle on their own than succeed with help. That makes no sense, War Marshal Gorthok replied. Independence is worthless if you are weak. Power is the only thing that matters. Not to humans, apparently, Kethaluna said. They seem to think that accepting our help would somehow make them less human. High Counselor Thexran reviewed the reports with growing frustration. The humans had been offered everything any species could want, and they refused it all. They acted as if the most powerful empire in galactic history was bothering them with unwanted sales calls. Make them a truly exceptional offer, he finally ordered. Give them something no other species has ever been offered. Zexthal's next communication with Earth was unprecedented in hegemony history. Secretary General Chun, he began. I have been authorized to make you an offer that has never been made to any other species. The hegemony is prepared to grant humanity full citizenship status immediately, with no probationary period. You would have equal representation in our government from day one. Chun looked genuinely surprised. That is indeed a remarkable offer, Ambassador. May I ask why you would make such an exception for humanity? Because your species has impressed the High Council with your dignity and thoughtfulness. We believe humans could make valuable contributions to galactic governance. Chun considered this carefully. Would this citizenship require us to accept hegemony law and administration on Earth? Yes, of course. All member species follow hegemony law. And would we be expected to contribute military forces to hegemony operations? Yes, that is standard for all members. And would hegemony administrators be stationed on Earth to ensure compliance with imperial policies? Naturally. This is how the Empire maintains order and efficiency. Chun nodded slowly. I see. So in exchange for advanced technology and representation in your government, humanity would give up its right to govern itself, its right to make its own laws, and its right to refuse participation in wars we might not support. Those rights are meaningless compared to what you would gain, Zexthal explained. You would have access to the combined knowledge of 3,000 civilizations. You would be part of something greater than your single world. Ambassador, Chun said quietly, what you are offering is not citizenship. It is surrender with better benefits. I do not understand the distinction. We would still be ourselves, but we would no longer be free to decide what being human means. That is not a trade we are willing to make. After this conversation, Zexthal made one final offer on his own authority. What if we made Earth the administrative center of an entire galactic sector? He asked. Humans could govern dozens of star systems. You would have real power in the Empire. Chun's response was immediate. Power over other species who did not choose us as their leaders? That sounds like exactly the kind of responsibility we would prefer to avoid. When this offer was also declined, Zexthal sent an urgent message to Hegemony Command. The humans cannot be bribed, threatened, or reasoned with using normal methods, he reported. They seem to operate on completely different principles from every other species we have encountered. I request instructions on how to proceed. The response came back within hours. War Marshal Kethver is en route with the 3rd Battle Fleet. If humans will not join the Empire willingly, they will be forced to comply. Prepare for military action. Zexthal looked down at the peaceful blue world below his ship. In 3 weeks of contact, the humans had shown no hostility, no aggression, no desire for conflict. They have been polite, respectful, and generous with their gifts. He was about to destroy the most puzzling and interesting species he had ever encountered. And he had no idea why they seemed so unconcerned about it. Perhaps after the bombardment began, they would finally understand what they were really facing. War Marshal Kethver arrived with 30 ships of the line. The 3rd Battle Fleet was the Hegemony's finest military force, veterans of 17 different conquest campaigns. They had never failed to bring a rebellious species to heel. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding Earth with enough firepower to reduce the entire planet to glowing ash. Kethver had been fighting wars for 2 centuries, and he had learned that overwhelming displays of force saved lives on both sides. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw what they were truly facing. This is War Marshal Kethver of the Galactic Hegemony, he broadcast to Earth. You have refused our generous offers of alliance. You now face the consequences of that choice. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will begin orbital bombardment of your major cities. The response came from Secretary General Chun within minutes. War Marshal, we appreciate your patience with our diplomatic process. We would like to request a face-to-face meeting to discuss the situation. Would you be willing to meet with a human representative aboard your ship? Kethver was surprised. Most species either started shooting immediately or began transmitting desperate surrender offers. Requesting a meeting was unusual, but it suggested they were finally ready to be reasonable. Very well, he replied. You may send one representative, unarmed, to my flagship. They will have 1 hour to present humanities. Surrender terms. What happened next violated every protocol the Hegemony had ever established for dealing with conquered species. A small human shuttle approached. The massive Hegemony dreadnought. The ship was tiny, primitive, powered by chemical rockets that barely qualified as space technology. It looked like a toy next to the war machine surrounding it. The shuttle docked with the flagship, and a single human emerged. It was Secretary General Chun herself. She wore a simple blue uniform and carried nothing but a small briefcase. No weapons, no guards, no advanced technology of any kind. She walked into the heart of the most powerful war machine in the galaxy as casually as if she were visiting a friend's house. Kethver met her in the main conference chamber, surrounded by his senior officers. The room was designed to intimidate, with holographic displays showing the firepower of the fleet, tactical readouts of Earth's defenses, and projections of what would happen to human cities under bombardment. Chun looked around the chamber with obvious interest. But no fear. "This is quite impressive," she said, settling into a chair that had been hastily adjusted for human proportions. "Your technology is remarkable. Thank you for allowing this meeting. You are here to discuss your surrender," Kethver said bluntly. "What are your terms?" "Actually," Chun said, opening her briefcase, "we were hoping to ask you a question first, if that would be all right." Kethver's 4 eyes narrowed. In 17 conquest campaigns, no species had ever wanted to ask him questions. "What question?" "In your 3 centuries of galactic conquest, how many species have you encountered that could have destroyed your entire fleet before you even reached their solar system?" The question made no sense. None, obviously. If such a species existed, they would rule the galaxy instead of us. Chun smiled that strange human expression again. What if they simply chose not to? Before Kethver could respond, Chun's aide activated a small device she had carried in the briefcase. Every holographic display in the conference chamber changed. The tactical readouts of Earth's defenses were replaced by new data. Data that showed energy signatures throughout the solar system that were orders of magnitude more powerful than anything on Kethver's ships. Hundreds of objects hung in space around Earth. Objects that had been there all along, but hidden by technology that made hegemony stealth systems look like children's toys. The power readings were impossible. Some of the human weapons platforms showed energy outputs that exceeded the total capacity of Kethver's entire fleet. "This is not possible," he whispered, staring at the displays. "Our sensors would have detected these installations." "Your sensors did detect them," Chun replied calmly. "You just didn't recognize them. Carbon dating suggests some of our orbital platforms have been in position for over 40 years. We've been watching the hegemony's expansion for quite some time." Ambassador Zexthal, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally found his voice. "If you have had this technology all along, why did you not reveal it earlier? Why did you let me make those offers?" "Because we were hoping you might surprise us," Chun said. "Every species you have conquered developed technology along the same basic path. Nuclear fission led to fusion. Fusion led to antimatter. Antimatter led to spatial manipulation drives. Very predictable. Very limited." She stood and walked to the main tactical display, apparently unconcerned by the dozen heavily armed hegemony officers surrounding her. "Humans are problem solvers, War Marshal. We don't follow expected development paths. We break them." Chun gestured to the display showing human technology. While other species developed faster than light travel by bending space around their ships, we learned to convince space that we were already where we needed to be. While they extended lifespans through genetic manipulation, we learned to transfer consciousness between bodies and treat death as a temporary inconvenience. She pointed to what the hegemony sensors had identified as primitive fusion reactors. "Those power sources you detected? They're backup systems. Our primary energy comes from controlled micro-singularities that feed on quantum foam. We generate more power by accident than most civilizations use deliberately." Kethver's mind reeled. If you possess such advanced technology, why do you live in such simple conditions? Why have you not expanded across the galaxy? Why would we want to expand across the galaxy? Chun asked, looking genuinely puzzled. Do you have any idea how much paperwork that would involve? We prefer to stay home and solve interesting problems. She returned to her seat, that disturbing smile returning. Besides, we've been watching what the hegemony does to species that resist, and what it does to species that submit. The end result is always the same cultural extinction. Submission just takes longer than conquest, but the final outcome is identical. Chun activated another display, showing hegemony worlds throughout the galaxy. But these were not the sanitized propaganda images the Empire used in its recruitment materials. These showed the real results of hegemony. Integration, species that had been so thoroughly absorbed into the Empire that they had lost every trace of what made them unique. Every offer you made was an offer to slowly erase humanity from existence, Chun said quietly, to turn us into another uniform component in your galactic machine. Did you really think we would say yes to that? The conference chamber fell silent. 2 centuries of military experience had not prepared Kethver for this situation. He was facing an enemy that could destroy his fleet without effort, but seemed to have no interest in conquest. They possessed technology that made the hegemony look primitive, but lived simple lives on a single world. What happens now? He finally asked. Do you destroy our ships? Conquer our worlds? Become the new galactic overlords? Chen looked surprised by the question. Why would we want to rule the galaxy? As I mentioned, the paperwork alone would be a nightmare. She leaned forward, and for the first time since entering the chamber, her expression became serious. No, War Marshal, we have a different proposal for you. A counteroffer, if you will. What kind of counteroffer? The kind that might actually solve the problems your empire has been struggling with for the past 3,000 years, Chun replied. If you are interested in hearing it. Secretary General Chun opened her briefcase again and pulled out a simple datapad. The device looked primitive compared to hegemony technology, but appearances had already proven to be deceiving when dealing with humans. Before we discuss our proposal, she said, there are some things you should understand about humanity. Things that might explain why we have been watching your empire for so long. She activated the datapad, and new information appeared on the chamber's displays. This time, it showed human historical records spanning thousands of years. The first rule of human development, Chun began, is that if something is impossible, we will find 3 different ways to do it anyway. Then argue about which method is most elegant. The second rule is that we never accept that a problem cannot be solved. The display showed human technological advancement over time. But unlike the linear progression that characterized every other species in the galaxy, human development looked completely chaotic. They had developed nuclear weapons before they had reliable computers. They had learned to manipulate genetics before they had developed spaceflight. They had created artificial intelligence before they had figured out fusion power. While the hegemony was conquering the Andromeda sector, Chun continued, humans were solving the consciousness transfer problem by accidentally creating it while trying to cure brain diseases. While you were developing your current faster-than-light drives, we were learning to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. War Marshal Kethver studied the data with growing amazement. This development pattern makes no sense. How did your species survive such chaotic technological growth? Practice, Chun replied. Humans have spent 10,000 years fighting wars against other humans. Beings just as creative, adaptable, and ruthlessly innovative as ourselves. We learned very quickly that any weapon we developed would eventually be used against us. So we also had to develop defenses against our own weapons. She gestured to another display showing human military history. By the time we achieved spaceflight, we had already survived nuclear weapons, biological warfare, artificial intelligence uprising, genetic manipulation disasters, and about a dozen different ways to end civilization. We learned to be very careful about technology and very good at fixing problems quickly. Ambassador Zexthal, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally spoke. If you have been watching us for 200 years, why did you not contact us earlier? Why did you allow us to continue our expansion campaigns? Chun's expression became serious. Because we hoped you would figure it out on your own. Every species you conquered made the hegemony a little larger, a little more complex, and a little more unstable. We kept waiting for you to realize that an empire built on forced compliance was eventually going to collapse under its own weight. She activated another display showing hegemony internal reports, documents that should have been classified at the highest levels of the empire. Resource depletion in the core worlds, growing rebellion in the outer systems, military forces stretched too thin to maintain control, birth rate declining among the ruling species, economic instability caused by forced tribute systems rather than genuine trade. Kethver stared at the display. Every item on the list was accurate, but these were the Empire's most closely guarded secrets. How do you have access to our classified information? He demanded. War Marshal, Chun said gently. We have been teaching guerrilla warfare tactics to your rebellious species for the past century. Did you wonder why every resistance movement you faced seemed to know exactly how to exploit weaknesses in hegemony military doctrine? The silence in the conference chamber was complete. Ketver felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Everything he thought he knew about galactic politics was being turned upside down. Every species you conquered, Chun continued, developed suspiciously effective resistance movements shortly after integration. Movements that use tactics specifically designed to counter hegemony advantages. Hit-and-run raids that avoided your superior firepower. Underground networks that your surveillance could not penetrate. Propaganda techniques that turned your own propaganda against you. She smiled that disturbing human expression again. We taught them everything we learned from fighting each other. Humans, you see, are very good at teaching people how to be free. But why? Zexthol asked. Why would you help species you had never met resist the hegemony? Because, Chun said simply, we could not stand by and watch civilizations be erased. Every species you integrated lost something precious, their unique way of seeing the universe. Their art, their music, their stories, their dreams, all replaced by standardized hegemony culture. The displays changed again, showing examples of what had been lost. Entire artistic traditions that had vanished within a generation of hegemony integration. Scientific discoveries that had been abandoned because they did not fit hegemony research priorities. Social systems that had worked for thousands of years, replaced by imperial bureaucracy. This is what you offered us, Chun said quietly. The chance to become another gray, uniform component in your machine. To trade everything that makes humanity unique for access to technology we had already surpassed. Kethver's worldview was crumbling. If you oppose everything the hegemony represents, why have you not simply destroyed us? Because destroying the hegemony would not solve the underlying problem, Chun replied. Something else would just rise to replace it. Another empire, another conquest cycle, another round of civilizations being erased. She leaned forward, and her voice became intense. War Marshal, do you know what the real problem is? The assumption that there can only be one way to do things. One government, one culture, one approach to technology, one solution to every problem. But unity creates efficiency, Kethver protested. Standardization eliminates conflict. Standardization eliminates innovation, Chun countered. When everyone thinks the same way, no one can solve new problems. When everyone follows the same rules, no one can adapt to changing circumstances. She gestured to the displays showing human technological development. Chaos is inefficient, but it is also creative. Diversity is messy, but it is also strong. When humans face a problem, we try a dozen different solutions simultaneously. Most of them fail, but the ones that work tend to work very well. Chun stood and walked to the chamber's main view screen, which showed the 30 ships of Kethver's battle fleet surrounding Earth. Your empire has grown by making every species follow the same pattern, she said. But what happens when that pattern encounters a problem it was not designed to solve? What happens when the universe throws something at you that hegemony doctrine cannot handle? She turned back to face the assembled officers. That is why we are making you an offer, War Marshal. Not to destroy the hegemony, but to transform it into something that might actually survive the next 1,000 years. Kethver found himself leaning forward despite his instincts. What kind of transformation? The kind that celebrates differences instead of erasing them, Chun replied. The kind that treats every species as a valuable contributor rather than a conquered subject. The kind that solves problems by encouraging innovation instead of enforcing conformity. She returned to her seat and opened the datapad. Again, we are prepared to share all of our technology with every species in the galaxy, she said. All of it. Consciousness transfer, dimensional manipulation, quantum energy extraction, even our most advanced weapon systems. What is the price? Kethver asked suspiciously. Chun smiled. The price is that you stop trying to make everyone the same. Secretary General Chun activated her datapad one final time. The displays in the conference chamber showed a detailed proposal that would reshape galactic civilization. Here are our terms, she said calmly. First, the hegemony will end its policy of forced integration immediately. Every species currently in the Empire will be given the choice to leave and govern themselves according to their own traditions. War Marshal Kethver stared at the display. That would mean the end of the Empire as we know it. Yes, Chun agreed. It would mean the end of an empire built on conquest and the beginning of something better. A confederation of free species working together by choice rather than by force. She continued to the second point. All hegemony military forces will be reduced to defensive fleets only. No more conquest campaigns, no more expansion wars, no more forced subjugation of independent worlds. How would we maintain order? Ambassador Zexthol asked. Without the threat of military action, some species might become aggressive toward their neighbors. That brings us to point 3, Chun replied. The Hegemony Council will be dissolved and replaced with a truly representative galactic confederation. Every species will have equal voice in galactic affairs, regardless of their technological development or military strength. Kethver shook his head. Primitive species cannot be trusted with important decisions. They lack the knowledge and experience to govern wisely. Define primitive, Chun said with a slight smile. Until today, you considered humanity primitive. How many other species have you underestimated because they chose different technological paths? She moved to the fourth point. Humans will establish cultural preservation corps on every world. Teams dedicated to helping species recover and maintain their unique traditions, languages, and ways of life that have been suppressed under hegemony rule. And what do humans gain from this arrangement? Kethver asked suspiciously. No species offers such generous terms without expecting something in return. Chun looked genuinely surprised by the question. We gain a galaxy where every species is free to be themselves. Where diversity is celebrated instead of eliminated. Where problems are solved through cooperation instead of conquest. That is not an advantage, Kethver insisted. That is chaos. War Marshal, Chun said patiently. Your empire has been struggling with the same problems for 3,000 years. Resource depletion, rebellions, economic instability, social unrest. How well has uniformity worked for you? She gestured to the displays, showing hegemony internal problems. Every solution you have tried has made the problems worse because you keep trying the same approach. You need different perspectives, different ideas, different ways of thinking about problems. Zexthal leaned forward. You mentioned sharing your technology. What would that include? Everything, Chun replied. Unlimited energy generation, consciousness transfer, dimensional travel, matter conversion, advanced medical techniques. We will also help you solve your current crises. Resource shortages, overpopulation, territorial disputes, the growing rebellion in the Outer Rim. All of this in exchange for dismantling our empire. In exchange for transforming your empire into something sustainable, Chun corrected. What you have now cannot last. It is too big, too complex, and too rigid to adapt to changing circumstances. Give it another 1,000 years, and it will collapse on its own. Kefir was silent for a long moment, considering the implications. Everything Chun said made sense, but it went against 3 centuries of military tradition and thousands of years of hegemony doctrine. What if we refuse your offer? He finally asked. Chun's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Something that made beings who had conquered half the galaxy instinctively step back. War Marshal, she said very quietly. Humans have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war against other humans. Beings just as creative, adaptable, and ruthlessly innovative as we are. We have fought wars against enemies who knew all our tactics, all our weaknesses, and all our capabilities. She stood slowly, and every officer in the chamber felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. Do you really want to find out what we learned from fighting opponents who were just as dangerous as we are? The silence stretched for almost a minute before Chun's expression returned to normal. But that is not really a choice between accepting our offer or maintaining your empire, she continued in a conversational tone. It is a choice between accepting our offer or discovering that your empire never really existed in the first place. You just thought it did because we allowed you to think it. She gestured to the displays showing human technology hidden throughout the galaxy. How many of your conquered worlds do you think we could liberate in a single day? How many of your fleets could we disable before they knew they were under attack? How long would it take us to turn your own weapons against you? Chun returned to her seat and closed the datapad. We would prefer not to find out, she said. We would much rather work with you to build something better. Something that honors the best aspects of what the hegemony tried to achieve while eliminating the worst. Kefir looked around the chamber at his senior officers. He could see the same thoughts reflected in their faces. They were military professionals who understood tactical realities. They were facing an enemy who could destroy them at will, but was offering partnership instead. How long do we have to consider your proposal? He asked. Take as much time as you need, Chun replied. We have been waiting 200 years. We can wait a little longer. She stood and picked up her briefcase. I should return to Earth now. My shuttle is not equipped for long-duration space travel. As she walked toward the chamber door, Kethver called after her. Secretary General Chun, there is one thing I do not understand. If humans are as advanced as you claim, why do you still use such primitive transportation? Chun paused at the doorway and smiled. War Marshal, we could have teleported directly onto your ship, or arrived in vessels that would make your dreadnought look like a toy. But we thought you might find that intimidating. She gestured toward the small, chemical-fueled shuttle visible through the chamber's viewports. Sometimes The most advanced thing you can do is to choose the simplest approach that accomplishes your goal. We came here to talk, not to show off." After she left, the hegemony officers stood in silence for several minutes. Finally, Zexthal spoke. "War Marshal, what are your orders?" Ketfer looked at the displays still showing human technology scattered throughout the galaxy. Hidden guardians that have been watching over conquered species for generations. Weapons that could end the Empire in hours. Teachers who have been quietly preparing rebellions across half the galaxy. "Open a priority channel to the High Council," he said. "Tell them I recommend we accept humanity's terms." "All of them?" "All of them," Ketfer confirmed. "Because I suspect Secretary General Chun was right about one thing. We do not really have a choice. We just have the illusion of choice." 3 days later, the Hegemony High Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's proposal. The transition took 7 years. When it was complete, the galaxy was indeed a very different place. Thousands of species rediscovered traditions they thought were lost forever. Conflicts that had raged for centuries were resolved through human mediation techniques that most species found surprisingly effective. Resource scarcity became a thing of the past as human technology made energy and matter effectively unlimited. The former hegemony leadership adapted better than expected to their new roles. Some even admitted they were happier serving as coordinators rather than conquerors. Secretary General Chun had been right about one thing. Cooperation was much more interesting than conquest, and humanity got exactly what they had wanted all along. A galaxy where every species was free to be magnificently, uniquely themselves.